talked about drawing a lot of cars today. Last time I talked about a technique where you can draw any car with 3 lines. Now, the purpose of doing that wasn't to show a particular kind of car, but you can draw any car like this. I can have basically a rectangle with a rectangle on top, and I can start carving this away to smooth it out a little bit. I'm using these 3 lines as a guide. And I have looking like a 99 Mustang here. But I could draw any car this way. So we're going to draw a whole bunch of them and just demonstrate how this technique can help you draw whatever you'd like by breaking it up into smaller shapes. We're going to start out with the DeLorean because it's got nice straight lines. It's basically a wedge. There's a line on the bottom, a line on the top of the body, and a line on the roof. So we're going to try to draw a line for the bottom of the body, a line for the top of the body, and a line for the roof. Now notice proportions of cars. This distance here is a little bit less than this distance here. So it's not exactly halfway between this line and this line. This is going to be a little bit higher. Now the body has a kind of a wedge in the front, so right about there. And then about halfway, let's look at the halfway across the car. So this A-pillar ends a little more than halfway. So right about there. And this kind of slopes back, and this slopes into it. It's almost a straight line here, but there is a little kink. And right about there, it slopes straight down to the back of the car. This is almost flat. It does slope a tiny bit, and the bumper comes back like this. Then we're going to put in a large wheel and a large wheel. We've got the basic shape. We want to get the basic shape first and then start getting major details. So we're going to get these door lines in, because the door lines establish where that B pillar is, and the C pillar goes right down that slope like this. And then we've got a trim going down the side of the car. Almost all cars have something going down the side. And once we've got this, then we can define our wheel wells. Now, we could spend a lot of time and make this look really nice and erase any construction lines and really work out the proportions and the details and add some shading. But this is not a lesson about drawing a DeLorean. This is a lesson showing how you can draw any car with this method. So we're going to leave it at this sketchy state and move on to another car. The next car we're going to draw is this Firebird. Now this is basically a boxy car, but it does have a little bit more curves in it. We've got these hips that come up. We have not exactly a trim line. We've got the metal that actually bends. So that creates our trim. It's not an actual thing glued on a car. Some cars just have the shape of the metal. And this goes right down the center of the car, and our wheel wells join up to that. And then this is relatively flat in the front, but it does flow down in the back. And this is relatively flat in the back, and it flows up like to the front here. And then this kind of swoops down a little bit. It's mostly flat on the top, and then we've got a very, very thick C pillar. Now, one thing that's common I see people do is they'll either draw these lines too far apart or draw them too short. And when you do that, you start drawing your car, and it doesn't matter what you do to it, it's not going to work right. I mean, see, if I tried to draw the door, it would hit that, it would hit the wheel, and you have to curve it around like that, which you see in the back doors but never in the front. And people get really frustrated. How come I can't draw this car? Well, you need to make sure these lines are long enough, and If this is a difficulty for you, here's another way to do it. Try doing this. Imagine you're going to draw this line and then the roof line, then we're going to draw the body line in between those two. So, for instance, if I drew these as body lines, it'd be too short. I'd end up with a roof right about like that, and it'd be a dopey looking car. But if I consider this the roof line and draw a body line right about here, this shape, this proportion of this rectangle is about the same as this. So that's another method that works. Remember that most of this is going to get erased, and that's why we draw light. So I'm going to look halfway in the car. I say, maybe about a third of the way in the car, that's where this door panel is and where that A-pillar starts. So right about a third. Let's go draw our A-pillars up for the roof. And then right about there, and there's our C-pillar. Now, this body line isn't exactly straight. It does somewhat curve, but it does something very interesting a lot of muscle cars do is right here before the C-pillar, it kind of bulges up, and it makes these hips. And right here is where your door line is. This door line comes forward a little bit. And I didn't quite do that one right. This has a little angle here, so I'm wondering, did I make my door not long enough? Or did I make this too long? I will try to fix that by just putting more of a slope on it. That looks a lot better. Now, I don't want to do my wheels first because my wheels are defined by where this line is. So I'm going to draw my trim line next, and then use that to help me draw the wheel wells. Now the wheel wells are kind of flat on the top on this car. And then I can draw the wheels and make them fit. Let's get the front. This thing is somewhat flat and it kind of curves out like this. The back end, make that a little bit longer. Curves up. You had a bumper. I don't see a bumper on this one. And it looks like this is a little bit too small. Sometimes this happens. This is why you want to draw light and have a better eraser than the one that I'm currently using. I will just draw this a little bit longer. And now I can move this wheel well a little bit forward. And now I've got room for those little vents. A common mistake that I do is, for some reason, I don't give it enough space here. And so that's something I constantly work on, is make sure that there's enough space between the wheel well and the front of the door. So here is our Firebird. There's a little wing back there. We're going to get even more curvy with this one. We've got ourselves a Dodge Viper. Two lines. Now, convertibles are really easy. All you really need to do is draw a line like that. I mean, there is a roof line, but we're not actually drawing a roof. This car does have a C-pillar here that kind of works as a roll bar. But students would ask me, how do you draw a convertible? I'd just say, hey, you leave the roof off and you put a windshield. That's all you really got to do. I'm looking at proportions. And this wonderful scoop is about a third of the way across the car. So a third right about there. And then this line kind of continues up and down slightly at the back. And the bumper kind of juts out like that a little bit. I love this shape on the Viper. It actually kind of curves back like this a tiny bit, but there's a line here that stops it. I'm going to put the wheels in first because I want big wheels. Keep enough room there. It actually says Viper on the full-size cars, I recall. This goes kind of up here by the wheel well, and it curves in the front. I like to draw from the front to back. And you might see a little bit of this little light and some grill here on the side. And then there's some pipes here. We have this back door line that goes like this, and it looks like there's too much room. So I move that wheel forward. Now this looks like it's too long. It's alright. Sometimes it's better to draw the new line and then erase the old line. Having that other line there helps your brain see proportions and how far you need to correct it. So there's a Dodge Viper. Now we've got a really curvy car. This is almost just two lines. We could draw this guy with just one big swoopy line and cut out of the inside like this. I'm going to draw this as two lines, but I am going to make a little line up here for the cockpit. And I'm going to look, here's about halfway, about a third of the way is this cockpit window. So right about there. Now I'm going to work on this first before I do anything else. This comes up slightly and it's got this wonderful curve that goes up and then down and then up and then down like this. So it's going to go up about a quarter of the way and down to reveal the cockpit, and then it's going to go up and then it's going to go back to almost a point. And then we've got a really big wheel. Now this wheel is behind a cover, so we're going to draw the whole wheel, but then we'll draw the cover and erase whatever we can't see. And we've got these fins in the back, and the cockpit kind of slopes down like that. We'll add some doors. We will see the side of the headlight. And there is a kind of a trim, it's more of a body panel division. It goes right like that. I'm assuming on the full-size car there would actually be a little panel you can remove, because otherwise how would you change the tire in the middle of a race? We have a limo. This is the same thing, 3 lines. It's just that they're very, very long. When they make limos, they actually start with a regular car and they kind of cut it, so they have the front half and they have the back half, and then they add this middle section. So we're going to make a limo, but we're actually going to make it super stretched. We are going to draw some really long lines. We're going to make this ridiculously long, and then we're going to draw ourselves a roof line. There we go. We're exaggerating this thing slightly. We will add our door lines. Thick C-pillar. Now, a lot of 4-door cars have the wheel get in the way of the door, so there's a little cutout for the wheel to fit in the door. So we want to put that wheel right underneath that C-pillar and make the door curve around it. And then let's put in a window and a window and a big window and some trim down the side. And we've got a limo that's so long that it would probably sag in the middle and not be able to turn any corners at all. Well, I hope you were successful with this lesson. Here are some of the topics planned for future lessons.